Now, I'd like to turn our attention very briefly, because again, this is something that Christians are going to have to start being able to address if you're not already doing so. I think it's important that we be able to start to work through some of this stuff. So, when it comes to the anti-Semitic things, let's just stop for just a moment. Let's look at this in the big picture and say, if you're one who actually believes that Israel has a place in the future, and that God is doing a thing among the Jewish people, and that it is going to carry over into the tribulation, and that there are going to be some very, very difficult times, I happen to be one of those. And I believe that much of the Old Testament is still unresolved. Yet I believe those unresolved passages require Israel to be back in the land. So when I start to see all of the things being said and the hatred that is being directed towards the Jews, and some of the just vile things that are said about them, I just laugh at that, because I just think the people who are saying the most incendiary things about that they control the world, they control the president, they control this country, they control this, they control that. I've said this before, there are about 15 million Jews on the planet in a planet of 8 billion people. So tell me that 15 million people are running 8 billion. You're out of your mind and you're silly. You're not even to be taken seriously. You're an embarrassment if you believe that, especially if you're in the church. But they're an easy target. And so if we're going to step back long enough to look at this, why is it that you can say some of the most vile, wicked, evil things about Christians and Jews that you would never think about saying about a Muslim or any other faith belief system that there is on the planet? And to me, as a Christian, that's pretty obvious. It's because those people saying that, whether they realize it or not, they're attacking the only God that actually exists. So I expect that kind of a thing. I don't lose much sleep over it. I expect it. When I read what the text has to say about the future, the idea that Christians would be hated, Jesus was telling that 2,000 years ago to the very same people that we're reading about here. They will hate you because they hate me. And those guys paid for it with their lives. But that hatred of who Jesus is going to kind of roll downhill to all who would call upon him. So don't be surprised. If you're a Christian and people hate you for it, well, why are you surprised? You're basically saying the name and espousing belief in him that they have hated for 2,000 years. People have hated him because of who he is. Why? Well, because ultimately he is who he is, and they're accountable to him whether they fully grasp it or not. The hatred is spiritual. And so the devil hates him more than anybody else. So the idea that the people who would call him Lord would be persecuted and hated shouldn't be a shock. Now, as far as Israel is concerned, why would Israel not be hated? They're his people. They're the ones that he has made a covenant with. Regardless of what some in the church would want to say that he's somehow done with Israel, they're not being serious when they look at the whole of the text of Scripture. They have a few verses here and there in the New Testament, and they create an entire doctrine and theology behind it, but they don't even bother looking at the Old Testament passages that clearly show that there is stuff that still needs to be done among the people. So they're back in the land. I'm not shocked by it. It's one of the reasons why I love to take people there to see it with their own eyes. They are brought back because God said he would. Every day that we're on the bus in Israel, we're reading the text from the prophet saying that he would restore them to the land. So none of that should come as a shock to us. And since that's the case, since God is bringing them back and he has these future plans, and we know a lot about those future plans through the prophets and the book of Revelation, these are things that will be taking place. So that same spiritual hatred that exists for Christians would obviously exist as far as Jews are concerned as well. So the idea that there's a raise in anti-Semitism is no shock to me. And it's only made worse by people, politicians, and people in very high places saying some of the most vile things about the nation of Israel that I could imagine. Now, sometimes they say, well, I hate Netanyahu. Well, I personally don't. I don't hate any of their leaders. Now, when they had Ehud Barak, it's a man who I don't have any respect for as an individual for the things that he had done, but I didn't hate him. I didn't pull my support for the nation of Israel because of bad leadership. The nation is the nation. The people are the people, and God is doing what he's doing through them, regardless of who their leaders are. It's the same thing through the time of the kings. Whether it was Israel or Judah, oftentimes they were led by incredibly wicked people, and never did God say they're no longer my people. So the idea that somehow they're not his people now is just absurd. It's lazy scholarship for those who try to say otherwise. But for the secular world, I'm not shocked by it. And I would expect it to be more angry and more incendiary as time goes by. Now, just in this last week, and I'm only going to give one example because of how incredibly evil it is. And it was something that really surprised even some people, and it's created a backlash in the Democrat Party. I'll put up her quote here in just a moment. But full disclosure, you have those on the right that have said the same things. And Thomas Massie just went down in his re-election bid. He lost in a primary. But he said some very incendiary things towards Israel, and he's been very negative towards them. In fact, he had a really snide little comment in his, quote, concession, where he said he tried to concede, but he couldn't find his opponent to concede because he couldn't find him in Tel Aviv. That was his backhanded swipe that, the only reason that Massie lost is because the Jews got him, basically. It's just a thinly veiled thing. But when I think of people like Tucker Carlson, and I think of Candace Owens, and I think of a guy like Thomas Massie, and I think of Marjorie Taylor Greene and some others that are considered to be on the right or conservatives that are just rabid anti-Semites, it happens on both sides of what we would consider the political spectrum. So we've been treated to the likes of AOC and Tlaib and Omar and a number of other people who are just vicious towards Israel. I'm just not surprised by it. But this one that we have here is worse than pretty much any that I've seen so far. So let me pull this up really quick, and I'll tell you a little bit about who she is and why this is really, I think, emblematic of a much larger problem that unfortunately I don't think is going to get any better. So the person that you're looking at here, her name is Maureen Galindo. She's going to be going into a runoff. She's running for the congressional seat in the 35th congressional district here in Texas. It's around San Antonio, and it's a very reliable Democrat seat. Although in the redistricting that we've just done here in the state, I happen to live in Texas, this is more of a competitive seat, and it may very well go to the Republican. But she is in a runoff that she'll go into, and if for some reason she's able to win that runoff, she would be the person running against the Republican in the race. Otherwise, ordinarily, she would probably, if she won the nomination, would more than likely be the congresswoman. So here's what she said, and it's just chilling. This is something that you could find. It was on her, I think it was on her X account, or maybe her Instagram. But it says, when Maureen gets into Congress, she will write legislation so that all Zionism and support for Zionism is undoubtedly anti-Semitic, since it's Zionists harming the Semites. She will turn Carnes ICE detention center into a prison for American Zionists and former ICE officials for human trafficking. It will also be a castration processing center for pedophiles, which will probably be most of the Zionists. So you can just see the kind of seething hatred and contempt that she has. And again, you're classifying a whole bunch of people. And who exactly is she talking about? Is she talking about only Jews, or is she talking about even people like myself? I'm a Christian Zionist, so I'm not Jewish, but I support them being in the land, and I am all for them coming back to the land that God had promised them all the way back to Abraham. So does that mean that I'm in part of this? Clearly, she's saying that the Jews are the ones who are hurting. She's probably thinking Palestinians here. It's more the sense that people feel that they have the freedom to say these things. And the fact that she has a home in a political party is enough to make you just want to vomit. Now, she's getting a lot of pushback now from the people in her own party, and there are a number of Jewish people in the Democrat Party in the House that have said if somehow she makes it there, we're going to every day that we're there, we're going to pass a resolution to have her expelled from the Congress. Let me bring her picture down. And again, she's just one of many people that are like her, but talk about a vile thing to say. And the fact that she feels the freedom to say it is enough to just it makes your head swim. So the freedom that people feel to say the kind of garbage like you just saw from her shouldn't come as any surprise. It's just the days in which we live. The idea that you can say the most incendiary and violent and vile and disgusting things about Christians and Jews, different than any other group of people on the planet, shouldn't surprise any of us. It's a spiritual matter, and that's the only way to explain the unnatural hatred of two particular groups. But in this case, the hatred towards Zionism or Zion or Jewish people, whatever you want to use, the hatred that there is towards them is mind-blowing. The fact that it's in the Democrat Party or on the hard right of people who called themselves conservative, again, Candace and Tucker and the rest of that bunch of crazy people, you have them all over the place, but the freedom with which they can say some of the most libelous things and get away with it and not have any fear tells you a lot about the days in which we live. And it really ought to help us understand the spiritual dynamic that's behind it. So for us as believers, we should understand what the scriptures have to say about it. I can, again, be supportive of the people in their land and that God has brought them back because I believe that they're a work of his hand. Do I believe that the people as a whole are walking before God? Clearly not. Do I believe that the government is godly and doing what they're supposed to? No, I don't. There are some in the government, I'm sure, that do. There are certainly people in the rank and file of the population that are, but none of that is prerequisite for God saying he was going to bring them back. In fact, many will come to him under enormous adversity during the tribulation, and many will never come to know who he is. But none of that is something that's contrary to what we would see in the text. God says he restores them without any of those things as being qualifiers or prerequisites. So it's important for us as Christians to know what it is that we believe. Why would we support a nation of people even if they are not following the Lord? Again, because he doesn't make those distinctions. And we need to recognize that they're there for a specific reason. And we are getting to the days before the Lord returns when we would expect to see them in the land. We would expect to see an incredible hatred towards them. Read the book of Revelation, and if you believe that that is still future, notice how decidedly Jewish that book is and how much it focuses in on Jerusalem in particular and the Jewish people. It's a heavy, heavy focus of that book. So if we're going to be careful with the text, we're going to recognize that they're back in the land for such a time as this, and God is doing the things that he is doing in and among them. So the idea that there would be these ungodly people saying some of the most vile, wicked, ultimately horrible things about them is right on schedule, shouldn't come as any surprise to anyone. It's just where we are in time. So if you have questions on any of what I've shared today, if you have any questions about the study itself or about the apologetic part or going to Israel with us, any of those things, contact me through the ministry's website. Our website is oldpaththeology.net, and I'd love to hear from you. There's a drop-down place where you can send an email to me in the Contact Us part of the website. So